6. The teacher introduces new commands after she's satisfied that the first 6 have been mastered. It's very important that the students feel successful. Feelings of success and low anxiety facilitate learning. So the teacher is satisfied with the first 6 commands that the students have mastered, and she gives them the impression of success because this is important in order to make them feel self-confident, and this will facilitate learning because this method pays special attention to students' feeling. The process of language learning should be an enjoyable process. The learning should take place with low anxiety. The teacher changes the order of commands. The students should not be made to memorize fixed routines. The teacher should make sure that the students are understanding the commands and not memorizing the actions. So if the teacher keeps the actions in the same order, the students might memorize the action. That's why the order of action is changed in order to make sure that they understand the meaning of the command. When the students make an error, the teacher repeats the command while acting it out. Correction should be carried out in an unobtrusive manner. In this case, the students are making errors in the actions that they are acting. So when the teacher observes this, the teacher indicates that the action is wrong by repeating it immediately and acting it in order to give them or to make them understand what is the correct action that should be performed. The teacher gives the students command they have not heard before. The students should be flexible in learning new commands in the same way in which they have learned previous commands. The teacher says jump to the desk, everyone laughs. Language learning is more effective when it's fun. I have just mentioned that making the process of language learning enjoyable is very important according to total physical response because it pays special attention to students' feeling. The teacher writes new commands on the board. Both written and spoken form of the target language are important, but the priority is given to spoken form. So spoken language should be emphasized over written language, but the teacher also writes the commands on the board in order to show the students the written form of the commands. A few weeks later, a student who has not spoken before gives command. Students will begin to speak when they are ready. Language production will start, or the students will start language production when they feel that they are ready to do so. A student says shake hand with your neighbor. Students are expected to make errors when they first begin speaking. Teachers should accept errors and work on correcting them. The teacher should be, or correction of errors should be postponed until the students have become somewhat proficient. So, the errors are acceptable. We mentioned that the students learn the language in the same way in which a child or a baby learns its native language. So, at the beginning, we expect errors. That's why we accept them. The teacher accepts errors, and later on, as the students are more proficient in language, the teacher will attract the attention to the errors produced. Now we shall start with reviewing the principles. What are the goals of teachers who use the total physical response? Teachers who use the total physical response believe in the importance of having their students enjoy the experience of learning to communicate in another language. So the first idea that language learning should be enjoyable. The total physical response was developed in order to reduce the stress people feel when they are studying other languages and thereby encourage students to persist in their study beyond a beginning level proficiency. So this is very important and helpful to students, to beginners or to young learners because it helps them to learn in an enjoyable way and to reduce the level or to reduce stress. The way to do this, Asher believes, is to base foreign language learning upon the way children learn their native language. So we should work on making the students learn the target language in the same way in which they have acquired their native language. What is the role of the teacher and what is the role of the students? Initially, the teacher is the director of all the students' behavior. The students are imitators of nonverbal model. At From the beginning, the teacher gives commands, he speaks the commands and acts them. Later on, at some point, after 10 to 20 hours of instruction, the students will be ready to speak. And at that point, there will be a role reversal with individual students directing the teacher and other students. So at the beginning, the teacher directs the students, while after having enough training and enough instruction, the students can give commands to the teacher and other students in the class. What are some characteristics of the teaching learning process? The first phase of a lesson is one of modeling. The teacher issues commands to few students, then performs the actions with them. In the second phase, these same students demonstrate that they can understand the commands by performing them alone. So first, the students perform the actions or the commands given by the teacher. Both the volunteers who participated and acted them in front of the students and the observers, the other students in the class. They also have an opportunity to demonstrate their understanding. The teacher next recombines elements of the commands to have students develop flexibility in understanding and familiar utterances. These commands which students perform are often humorous in order to have fun. After learning to respond to some oral commands, the students learn to read and write them. Both spoken form and written form are emphasized with more emphasis given to the spoken form. When students are ready to speak, they become ones who issue the commands. We have role reversal, the roles change. After demonstrating their knowledge of the commands, the students will be able to produce the commands and the teacher and other students will respond to the students. After students begin speaking, activities expand to include skates and games. What is the nature of students-teacher interaction? What is the nature of students interaction? The teacher interacts with the whole group of students and with individual students initially. The interaction is characterized by the teacher speaking and the students responding non-verbally by action. Later on, the students become more verbal and the teacher responds non-verbally. After this, we have role reversal. The students will produce the commands and the teacher will act them. Students perform actions together. Students can learn by watching each other at some point. Asher believes observers must demonstrate their understanding of the commands in order to retain them, in order to understand, to remember the actions. All observers are supposed to demonstrate their understanding and their ability to act the actions. As students begin to speak, they issue commands to one another as well as to the teacher. So first we have teacher-students interaction, then we have students-teacher interaction and students-students interaction. Here we have a very important point which is given a special emphasis by Asher, which is the students' feeling. How are the feelings of the students dealt with? One of the main reasons for the development of total physical response was to reduce stress people feel when they study other languages. One of the primary ways this is accomplished is to allow learners to speak when they are ready. So students are not obliged to produce the language, and they have self-confidence because they feel that they will not produce the language if they are not ready to do so. Forcing them to speak before then will only create anxiety. Also, when students do begin to speak, perfection should not be expected. In this case, we expect students' errors to happen and we accept them. Later on, errors should be corrected as the students have a more advanced or developed level of language proficiency. Another way to relieve anxiety is to make language learning enjoyable or as enjoyable as possible. The use of silly commands and humorous skits are two ways of showing that language learning can be fun. Finally, it's important that there not be too much modeling, but that students not be too rushed either. Feelings of success and low anxiety facilitate learning. How is language viewed? How is culture viewed? Just as with acquisition of the native language, the oral modality is primary. So language is oral language, oral production of language, while culture is learned according to learning the lifestyle of people who speak the language natively. Now we come to areas of language which are emphasized and skills which are emphasized. Vocabulary and grammatical structures are emphasized over other language areas. So we have emphasis on vocabulary and grammatical structures. The most important grammatical structure which is emphasized by the teacher is the form of imperatives because it's very useful in giving commands. The students understand them and they can act them directly. The imperatives are single words and multi-word chunks. One reason for the use of imperatives is their frequency of occurrence in the speech directed at young children learning their native language. Understanding the spoken word should precede its production. So first, what is the grammatical structure which is emphasized is the imperative. Why? Because it is the form which is used mainly in acquiring the native language, and at the same time it's very useful in making comments. If we come to language skills, the emphasis first starts to understanding. The student starts with understanding the language by listening to the language, then they will produce the language. Spoken language is emphasized over written language. Students often do not learn to read the commands they have already learned to perform until after 10 hours of instruction. Still, the students are supposed to learn the written form of the commands, but after having enough practice of these commands orally, after mastering them orally, they will be able to read them and write them. What is the role of the student's native language? The student's native language is not used during language instruction. The teacher uses the target language to give commands and act these commands. So the total physical response is usually introduced in the student's native language. Only the introduction is given in the native language. After the introduction, rarely would the native language be used. Meaning is made clear through body movement. So in this case, first the teacher starts only the introduction of the method in the native language on the way they will work together, the teacher and the students. After this, all the commands are given in the target language. How is evaluation accomplished? Teachers will know immediately whether or not the students understand by observing their students' actions. So when the teacher gives the commands, the students perform the action. According to the action performance, the teacher will evaluate the students if they are successful or not. Formal evaluation can be conducted simply by commending individual students to perform a series of actions. As students become more advanced, their performance of skills they have created can become the basis for evaluation. So, students' performance will be the basis for students' evaluation. How does the teacher respond to students' errors? We talked about this. We mentioned that since we are learning in the same way a baby or a child learning its native language, so errors are acceptable. It is accepted that students will make errors when they first begin speaking, and teachers should tolerate them and only correct major errors. Even these should be corrected unobtrusively. As students get more advanced, teachers can fine tune, correct more minor errors. So, in this case, the teacher should deal only with major errors, and as students develop their level of language proficiency, the students will deal with minor errors. Now we come to reviewing the techniques. Actually, we don't have any large number of techniques. We have only three techniques. Number one, using commands to direct behavior. This technique is very clear. The teacher uses commands as the major technique in total physical response. The commands are given to get students to perform an action. The action makes the meaning. At the first, to clarify meaning, the teacher performs the actions with the students. Later, the teacher directs the students alone. The students' actions tell the teacher whether or not the students understand the command clearly. Another technique which is used by the teacher is role reversal. Students command their teacher and the classmates to perform some actions. Asher says that the students will want to speak after 10 to 20 hours and sometimes more than this. So after having enough instruction and enough practice of the commands, the students will be able to produce the commands and produce the commands, and the teacher and other students act them. So here we have role reversal. At the same time, Asher emphasizes that students should not be encouraged to speak until they are ready to do so. The last technique is action sequence, in which the teacher uses commands which are related to the same idea. Or we have a series of commands which are related to the same idea. At one point, we saw the teacher give three connected commands. For example, the teacher told the students to point to the door, walk to the door, and touch the door. As the students learn more and more, the target language, a longer series of connected commands can be given, which together comprise a whole procedure. We have not observed this in the lesson, but this technique can be used by the teacher in advanced stages or after having enough practice. For example, the teacher can say, take out a pen, take out a piece of paper, write a letter, fold the letter, put it in an envelope, seal the envelope, write the address on the envelope, put the stamp on the envelope, and mail the letter. So in this case, we have a number of actions or a series of actions which are related to the same idea. That's all for our lecture today. Thank you very much.